Veterans Affairs began verbal updates to communications managers and bureaucrats to prevent leaving a paper trail amongst those handling the fallout of the scandal of Veterans Affairs caseworkers offering suffering and desperate veterans euthanasia instead of treatment, and I have the documents to prove it.
He was asking for a completely separate service and supports for neurological injuries. And she said, oh, just by the way, if up the road you have suicidal thoughts, and this is what he told me she said, it's better than blowing your brains out against the wall.
I've been examining 2,220 pages of exclusively obtained access to information documents from Veterans Affairs Canada relating to what appears to be systemic advice to veterans to access Canada's euthanasia program when calling their VAC caseworkers for help. Nearly a dozen veterans experiencing acute PTSD or asking for access to aids to daily living to deal with their service-related injuries came forward over recent years to say that their Veterans Affairs caseworkers had suggested a medical death to them. At first, the Veterans Affairs Ministry and Minister Lawrence MacAulay claimed that just one caseworker working out of one office was responsible for the scandal. However, as more veterans came forward, it became evident that other offices and other caseworkers were involved.
With respect to MAID, I have a letter in my file because I had to face that as well. I have a letter saying that if you are so desperate, madam, we can offer you MAID, medical assistance in dying.
I wanted to know how systemic and institutionalized the problem was, so I started filing for records through access to information made possible by crowdfunded donations to rebelinvestigates.com. These current documents relate to the communications strategy to handle the cascading revelations against Veterans Affairs caseworkers. I am not finished investigating these documents, but I do have some news to share with you. We can see attempts to cover up, obscure, and backtrack. On page 21, we can see in the media lines that Veterans Affairs officials were at first planning to claim that there were no other incidents of Veterans Affairs staff telling veterans to kill themselves. Now, they had to remove that from their talking points because more and more veterans kept coming forward. Staff also claimed that the other cases that were being reported were just veterans calling to ask about whether getting assisted suicide would kill their benefits since it would count as self-harming. That's on page 31. Veterans may approach VAC following their decision to pursue medical assistance in dying. In those cases, Veterans Affairs helps the veteran and the family understand their benefits as well as other support services that may be relevant to the veteran's unique circumstances. Now, here is where you can see evidence of a cover-up in real time in black and white. On page 679, the Veterans Affairs media team says to only provide verbal updates. You see, they don't want things in writing because writing amounts to a paper trail, which I can access. Recommendation to keep the updates verbally to a limited distribution, but will follow DMO OSD's preferred format and frequency. So what I'm seeing is not what really happened because they were doing verbal updates to each other so that nobody could file for access to information. We may never know the full extent of just how systemic the advice to veterans was to kill themselves from the very people tasked with helping them live. Let's keep going though. Page 1219, you can see the Veterans Affairs communications bureaucrats are worried about our coverage here at Rebel News when responding to media requests about euthanizing veterans. Is it from Rebel News, they write. Why? Because you won't respond to me? On page 1220, the media team is trying to determine exactly how many veterans have been told to drop dead so they can include this information in their talking points for Lawrence MacAulay, the aforementioned Minister of Veterans Affairs. But the bureaucrats can't pin down the number, so they don't even bother. What is less than 5? 3? I would not include this. On page 2125, we can see just how out of touch these Veterans Affairs communications people are with normal people living in the outside world beyond the machinery of the Liberal government. Everyday people who think veterans need care and not state-sanctioned homicide. Look at this exchange. Hello, all. It's interesting to follow the thrice daily media report emails to see how far this main story is traveling. Yesterday, it was reported by a couple of U.S. news outlets, and today it's in the UK Daily Mail. Yes. Very interesting, you guys. Another Veterans Affairs communications person writes, it's interesting to see how much coverage it's getting. I had wondered if there would be anyone else to come forward out of the woodwork to say it had happened to them too, but so far nothing, thankfully. A bureaucrat responds. As you may have seen in a follow-up story by Global, who broke the story, the veteran who originally complained about this VAC advice also said that the VAC agent said they had mentioned medical assistance in dying to another veteran, and the veteran had followed through with it. Now, I'm still examining these documents. I'll release more as I go, but there are so many, and I'm still filing for access to information. This is simply just on the communication strategy. There are so many other documents to get access to. If you'd like to contribute to our research costs, please visit rebelinvestigates.com. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Access to information documents are one of the best ways that we can see what the government is doing behind closed doors when they think nobody is watching. It's especially unpalatable when they are doing these things to vulnerable, desperate people who have been damaged doing what we ask them to do to serve our country. If you'd like to offset my research costs into Veterans Affairs, please consider making a donation at rebelinvestigates.com.